Hello, everyone. Welcome. And to those of you who celebrate Easter, happy Easter. Happy Easter to you and to your loved ones. And if this is not a holiday for you, but you're just, home, maybe talking to family, maybe you have family at home and you can share in stories, or you can share some good memories or find some things to laugh about. That would be really great on this Sunday. So I'm Edie Nathan, and I'm a psychotherapist here in New York City. I help people work through their grief, and I think of grief as an unexpected ally. And the unexpected ally is something that we don't expect, right? We think, oh, grief, it's so dark, and it is, and it's painful, and it is. And yet, you may find strength in your grief, or in your isolation, or in your yearning that you may have forgotten you had, or you may never have even met within yourself. And so there is a certain grace in finding yourself, in meeting yourself, in realizing, wow, I didn't know that I could be with myself and I could be comfortable. I didn't know that being in these quiet times that I'd feel anxious or frustrated. I didn't know that in these moments I would learn about myself and find a really good cable show that I'd been wanting to watch, and I just didn't get to it. One of the shows that we've been watching is This Is Us, and we haven't had time to, really watch the whole series, and now we're in the 4th season, and it's a riveting show because the characters are so real and raw and alive, and they're always having to maneuver in finding their truth and finding their kinship and finding what's real for them, and going through a lot of the issues that a lot of families go through, and ultimately trying to find grace, the grace of maybe forgiveness, the grace of appreciation, the grace in being able to say, you know what, I need a do-over. The grace in being able to point out beauty. And all of these levels come out in this cable show, or maybe it's not cable, maybe it's we see it on cable. So, but it is so fantastic to see a little bit of humanity, and maybe a father that's just a little bit too good, but he certainly got grace. And there's grief in this show. And today I'd like to talk about grief and grace, the 2 G's. Now, in my book, It's Grief, The Dance of Self-Discovery Through Trauma and Loss, in the 11 phases, I talk about grace. Like, grace is exactly where you want to land with your grief. I also talk about the big G's and the little G's. And the big G is the loss of a loved one. And if any of you are experiencing that, honor whatever movement you need to go through with this. Talk about it. Write about it. Mourn, honor the temperament of your grief. If you are experiencing a little grief, a little G, Those little G's might just be, God, I just miss being with my friends. I realize I get my sustenance by being in touch with and in contact with my friends. And those are little G's. But this is the thing. When little G's aren't attended to or noticed or acknowledged, they can become a big G. And in the temperament of grief, in these big G's and these little G's, being vulnerable, speaking your truth around them, what your truths are, what your feelings are, what your emotions are, that leads you to grace. It leads you to truth. It may even lead you to a place of saying, I feel isolated and scared. And I don't want to tell anybody because I'm afraid that they're going to judge me. I'm afraid that they're going to look at me askance. I'm afraid that maybe they won't be my friend. And if that's the case, maybe it's time to claim yourself in this and say, wow, if I can't share this with a so-called friend, then maybe it's time for me to think about the kinds of friends I want in my life. Maybe it's time to think about the kind of friend you want to be. And that's, again, getting in touch with your grace. Getting in touch with the color of your grace. Like, what does it look like? Is it full? Is it big? Is it bright? When you are in grace, when you feel like you are in grace, is there a color associated to it? Is it green? Is it pink? Is it yellow or purple? What's the color of your grace? Because to call in that color, to wrap yourself around in that color, can actually create it. And you become the creator of this grace. And if you are in that big G place, that big grief, and you're hurting in your heart, you can't even speak because the grief has taken your voice, where the tears just won't stop, where you feel helpless and scared, maybe alone, even if there are people around you, because we all grieve differently and we all experience our grace differently. And if today you find that you're grieving, honor it. You might also be able to find a memory that brings some joy to you. And it's okay that in your grief, that you can have some grief relief through memories, through telling of a story. So today, your grace is how you live your life today, how you tap into maybe your graciousness, reaching out to a friend who maybe you haven't talked to in a really long time, or maybe you had a falling out with. Who knows? This COVID-19 can change relationships. And we get to learn about those relationships as we learn about the relationship with and to the self. So as you go inside today, inside yourself, maybe as you share with friends or family, even through Facebook or Instagram or Zoom, something that's going on for you, you can also summon your truth. And finding the balance between your grief and the grace in your grief. And that grace could just be an honest portrayal of whatever is going on for you, your honest narrative. And that honest narrative is more important than anything else. So in this moment, I'd like you to think about what that color of grace is for you and breathe it in. And you might find that you're crying, and that's okay. You might find you've got a smile on your face, and that's okay too. You might find that you really haven't even thought about grace, and that's okay too. And your relationship with grief, like your relationship with grace, is ever changing. It changes from one minute to the next, and you're always getting new information about how you're going to handle the next moment, the next thought. And you might want to write it down, because sometimes in that moment a thought gets lost, but it's an important thought. And maybe it's a thought or a memory or a feeling that you want to share with someone, and pick out who that person is. So today, I feel very graced by your presence, and I am honored to be with you on this very, very hard journey that we're all experiencing. And we're experiencing it in different ways, and no one way is the right way. So you've got this. You've had the power all along. Contact 3 people, maybe someone you haven't spoken to in a really long time, maybe a family member who you just need to say, hey, I love you, or I need you, or I want you. And maybe someone who is just a really good friend, and you just want to remind them of the connection, because these connections are so, so important. Please know that you've got this power, and share 3 things with these 3 people. Something that made you laugh. Maybe something that's making you think about your own grace and what it means to you to have grace, and something that you're mourning right now. I'll see you tomorrow at noon. And thank you and blessings to every single one of you. Thanks.